Have a listen to this. Have a listen to this. Now, that kind of talk this week dragged Australia's share market to a two-year low. There are, of course, complex reasons for that.
He was the big spender. The big spender.
Doing the grocery shopping could take a huge chunk out of the family budget.
And that's finance.
Welcome to Comedian versus Economist. We demystify the world of money and help you get a handle on the bigger picture. My name's Adam, and as always, I'm joined by my older brother and real-life economist, Thomas. Thomas, how you going?
Good, thanks, Adam. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. Look, we're going to continue our introductory series, I suppose this is, to economics, Economics 101. We've talked about a lot of things so far in the podcast. If you haven't been tuning in from the beginning, be sure to go back to episode 1, where we pair it right back to the absolute basics and then start to get a bit more involved from there. But I'm actually excited about this episode today because we're talking about the Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, which the RBA seems to pop up everywhere, seems to pop up whenever you see anything about money or economics on the news. And other than being a bank that wasn't good enough to play first grade, what is the Reserve Bank, Thomas?
It's a classic gag. So the RBA is Australia's central bank. So all governments, all nations have a central bank, and it's sort of like the government bank. It controls the government money. It also controls all the money in the financial system.
Right. And why is it called the Reserve Bank? Is that where our cash reserves are? Is that where the name comes from?
Yeah, it's all coming together now.
I've been reading, Thomas. I've been reading. So we've got the Reserve Bank, and you said it's the government. The government owns a Reserve Bank. That's the government's money.
That's right. Yeah. It's
not true. That was a trick question. I was also reading. It's an independent bank. It's not owned by the government.
No. It has statutory independence. So it's.
I thought I got you. I thought it was a real singer.
Thing. It has statutory independence. So the government appoints the RBA governor and the key people in the RBA. But once the RBA is up and running, then it's independent from the government, and the government can't control or influence the RBA's decisions.
Right. So the politicians can't kind of manipulate the RBA in any way. They're completely independent.
Yeah. So there was an idea. It wasn't always that way, but that idea has sort of taken off over the last 30 odd years or so. Now pretty much every central bank around the world is independent. But the idea was that it used to get problematic because politicians would manage interest rates with the short-term political cycle in mind. So they would try and cut rates just before the election to give themselves a boost and that sort of thing. So it was decided that it was a much better system to take the politicians out of it.
Yeah, very good. No, fix the bank. Don't fix politics. Politics is fine. And so, all right. So, what does it do? What does the Reserve Bank do?
Well, effectively, you can think of the Reserve Bank doing two things. One, it controls the amount of money in the system, and two, it controls the price of money in the system.
The price of money being interest rates.
Being interest rates, that's right.
Okay.
So it controls the amount of money. So the amount of money, normally we don't focus too much on this because we're talking about literally the printing presses. And so the RBA, has a mint where it produces the money, the physical money that we use. But more importantly than that, it also controls the amount of digital money in the economy. It can
Bitcoin stuff.
No, not Bitcoin. No, actual currency,
Right.
actual money. Yeah, just throwing some FUD out there.
Yeah, you're not a fan of Bitcoin, eh?
I'm not a fan. No. I'm an economist.
Make of that what you will.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm all in Bitcoin. So they you said they print the money. They're the mint as well, are they?
Yeah.
So presumably then they retire money too. Why haven't they got rid of the 5-cent coin?
It'll probably happen at some point. I mean, they got rid of ones and twos not that long ago.
That's a long time ago. What is that, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Oh, well,
Ones and twos?
feels like yesterday.
We had them as they were in the garden as kids, I remember. And even then they weren't worth picking out.
Yeah.
5 cents though. I don't even think vending machines take 5 cents. Most vending machines don't even take cash. 5 cents.
Yeah, right.
Even my kids wouldn't have no idea what to do with 5 cents.
Yeah, it's probably not long.
I feel like we might have lost some people who tuned in to hear about the RBA. All right, so it's government money. They're controlling how much money is in the system, and they're controlling the price of money. So I guess first of all, how do they control? You said that they can print money. That's how they can put more money into the system. Can they take money out of the system? Is there a mechanism to do that?
Yep, definitely. It all just exists on a computer ledger somewhere, and that can be created or destroyed when it comes back into the RBA's coffers.
Right.
So the RBA can literally has the power to just print money that it can then give to a bank or to the government.
Right, and we can't access the money, obviously. So we have to go through a retail, because obviously the RBA, killer rates if you're looking for a home loan. But we obviously can't access those rates, and because
it's hard to find an office.
I've tried calling the RBA to speak to a broker. They just don't. Can I speak to one of your home loan managers, please? Right, so that's what they do. The RBA lend money to who? Just to the banks, to the government,
I think that's probably the only two places that they're operating.
The government and the banks.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's easy. This seems too easy.
Yeah, it's not a complex system ultimately, I don't think. I mean, it depends how much detail you want to go into it, but it's reasonably straightforward. So they control the amount of money and the price of money. The amount of money, normally they just set that growing. This sort of comes back to our conversation last week about annual growth rates. They typically, in the past, just sort of set a broad trajectory of money, the money supply to expand at about 2% a year or something like that. And that's sort of a hands-off process. They're not actively trying to manage the amount of money in the economy. That all changed with COVID. So we're now in, like most countries in the world, we're in a sort of a quantitative easing era. So quantitative easing was once interest rates hit their floor and they couldn't make the price of money cheaper than it was, they then went over to the amount of money and said, okay, well, we can increase the amount of money in the economy. And that has a stimulatory effect. So the more money flowing around, the more things get spent, more money people have, the cheaper interest rates get. That sort of revs the economy up.
And how do they put the money in there? Like, how do they inject the money? So they print this money. I mean, they can't just give it to, I didn't get any. I don't know about you. They can't just give it to people. Well, presumably they can't just give it to, can they give it to the government? Do they just say, here, Josh Zoidberg, you can spend, buy up some Frydenberg. It'll never stick. You can just buy some infrastructure or build some roads or whatever. So how do they give it to the government?
They buy government bonds, and they buy government bonds either directly from the government or they buy it from the banks. So the government issues a bond and says, we want $100 million and we're issuing a bond that, we'll take $100 million and we'll pay back this much at this rate.
What is a, just go back a step. So what's a bond? Like
it's where you borrow money from someone with a promise to pay them back at a particular point plus interest.
Right. Okay. And so that's a debt. And so the RBA buys the debt from the government.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So the RBA prints money, presses a button on a computer. Boing. Yeah. They've got lots of money.
Does it make that sound? It does. I love it.
Boing.
I so hope it does.
I used to work at the Reserve Bank, and it was happy days when you hear the boing.
Yeah.
Go off. Hey.
That's the good times. That's the good time sound. Boing. Like when you're at a bar and someone dings the bell. Everyone's like, hey. So you did work at the RBA. That was a while ago now, wasn't it? What was that, like 20 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. Probably started in about 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
What was it like?
It was good. It was a good place to work. It was full of economists, so it's not for everyone.
I think we might have just different definitions of good place to work. That's all. But sure, what's good for you.
No, I mean it was great. There was a lot. Like I have a huge respect for the institution and what I saw as like the intellectual integrity of the people working there. That like I felt there was a genuine quest for truth and doing the best thing possible,
right,
for the Australian people. And yeah, I felt like that was sort of in the management. I think generally people felt it was a real honor to work there because everyone's really interested in what's going on in the RBA. The decisions that you make collectively have a real impact on the economy. And yeah, people take that really seriously. Yeah, so
right. So okay, good. So back to what they do. So they buy the debt from the government. The government takes the money, and then they might issue stimulus to people through the stimulus packages or whatever, or they might buy things.
So the government, the train goes. The RBA prints the money, boing. With that money, they buy government debt. They buy government bonds. The government now has money. The government then can spend that money. It pays the people building the roads. Those people then have money, and from there, it's into the economy.
Yeah, and so with we're still in COVID times. JobKeeper, JobSeeker, is all that stuff kind of funded through that process? Did the government? Did they have to go to like they had to sell a bunch of bonds to kind of, I don't know, like a little like a sports club fundraiser
That's right.
type situation?
Oh no, Zoidberg's coming round again.
He's got the meat tray.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. So the funny thing with it, this is sort of where we're getting into sort of modern monetary theory, and we should probably do a show on this actually because it's very interesting times. This is where the real paradigm shift in economics is right now. But yeah, so basically the RBA is printing money, it's buying government bonds. Those bonds then become an asset that the RBA is holding. The RBA can hang on to those, or it can sell them back into the market. But if it hangs on to them, then it collects the interest payments from the government, and it's made a profit. So it's printed money, it's bought a bond, the bond has a return, and they've made money.
So the obvious question, given that it's an independent entity, can I invest in the RBA? They seem like they're on a very good wicket.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you'd make a cracker. Well, but that's the thing is though, the RBA is owned by the government. So you see what's going on there. The RBA is printing money, buying government bonds. The profit that the RBA makes is then returned to the government as a dividend. Nice.
So the government's invested in the RBA.
Yeah.
In a way, that's their core portfolio.
So effectively, do you see what's happened there? But effectively, the government has got that money for free. So it sold, last time I looked, it was something like $70 billion in bonds. And it's paid interest to the RBA if it, it's mature. It pays interest to the RBA. The RBA takes that money, it becomes profit. It then returns the profit to the government. So the government pays the RBA just then hands it back to the government, and we're all good.
We're all good. It seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
I guess that's the modern monetary theory billion-dollar question.
Let's flag that for our listeners and maybe another show.
All right, cool. So I reckon that's probably enough talk about the amount of money in the system, the quantity of money, and we can get onto quantitative easing and modern monetary theory another time perhaps. So we're going to take a short break here, get a quick word from our sponsor, and then we're going to come back and talk about the price of money. All right, welcome back. We're talking RBA. We're talking what do they do? Why do they matter? Thomas, we've talked about the RBA and how they can control how much money is in the system, the quantity of money, but they also control the price of money or the interest rates. And so as of recording right now, the interest rates the RBA set, which is, what do they call it, the cash rate, the base rate?
Cash rate, yep.
Cash rate, where it was at 0.25 not long ago, and they said, that's it, lowest it'll ever go. It's not going any lower. We just physically cannot take it any lower. Take it from me, take it as written. That's it, no more. And then what happened? A month later, by the way, news just in, it's going lower. So what's going on?
Yeah, over the last sort of 20 odd years or so, we've controlled the economy by controlling the price of money, by controlling interest rates. And basically the idea is that when you want the economy to run a little hotter, when you want to stimulate things, get it going along, you cut interest rates, bring interest rates down. That makes, home loans cheaper, puts more money in people's pockets, makes it easier to borrow, to invest. And that gets the economy up and going. If it's getting too hot and things are running too fast, then you raise interest rates and that puts a bit of a brake on things. And that's sort of the interest rate mechanism. And that sort of was typically that was the primary tool that the RBA and all central banks had until they went to hit the floor, until they went to 0.25 and then 0.1.
So
yeah.
Can they go lower then? Like, are we headed to negative territory?
It's probably not likely. Things tend to get a bit weird in negative territory. There's a few things that start peaking out.
You're supposed to be explaining this, right?
Technical.
I don't know that a few things that start peaking out is.
No, they do. They get a bit weird because all the incentives in the financial system get thrown into reverse, and the system's just not meant to flow that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
You're not meant to be able to go to a bank and for them to pay you to take money from them. But that's not meant to happen.
You barely get through the sentence.
Yeah, that's right. Like my head's
like, so I can see it, like it's happening. Yeah, that's right. I can't even kind of comprehend that notion that I could borrow money. I could hold money for someone effectively, and they would pay me to kind of hold their money. It kind of flips the whole thing on its head, where now I'm the bank. Who's the bank now? All right, so they've got interest rates moving up and down to control. So
just on that, so economy-wide negative interest rates are unlikely.
Right.
That's probably not going to happen. But you could see sort of negative interest rate, not exactly negative interest rates, but the RBA has set up. This is sort of like, we're sort of talking about particularly what's going on in COVID times, but the RBA has set up something called the Term Funding Facility, the TFF. And that's a specific facility that lends money to the banks at sort of fixed interest rates.
Right.
That enables the banks to take that money and lend to the mortgage market. And that's set right now at 0.1%. So the big banks have stopped taking money from the market like they used to do. They used to borrow offshore, or they used to raise money from deposits. Or they would issue bonds. They've stopped doing that, and then they're now taking money from the RBA at 0.1%. So the cost of capital for the banks has gone to 0.1% for fixed rates, which they're then able to pass on to consumers, which is why you've now got mortgage rates for fixed mortgages at 1.99%, below 2%. We've never seen before.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, it is theoretically possible, if the RBA wanted to, that the RBA could turn that term funding facility rate negative. So it could, if it wanted to, pay banks to take money from the RBA to lend to consumers. That's theoretically possible.
Right, and that might make sense. Like if the motivation of the RBA was to stimulate the economy, then they might say, well, in order to do that, we're going to try and do that through lowering interest rates, knowing that they're effectively saying we're going to take a hit ourselves, but we're going to give the money to the banks just so that we can keep people borrowing and the banks can keep lending.
Yeah, exactly. And the RBA is not taking a hit. Remember, they're just printing money.
Right, yeah.
Boing.
That's right. Well, yeah, I mean, so why... From an RBA perspective, interest rates become a bit of a moot point, don't they? Like if they just go, well, we can pay people to do whatever we want, and we can pay them as much as we want because we can print as much money as we want.
Yeah, it's not without consequences, and we'll get into that in the episode when we start talking about MMT. It's not without consequences. The question becomes, are you willing to deal with those consequences?
All right,
and we'll go into that. Probably the only other thing that's really worth stressing with the RBA is that the RBA's mandate is for stability of the currency, stable prices, and full employment and the welfare of Australians.
Right.
Like that's what they're statutorily set out to do. But in practice, what they do is target inflation. So there was an idea that the best thing that central banks could do is not worry about employment or GDP too much, but focus on inflation and become inflation targeting. And so we've really been targeting inflation. The key to that decision I was talking about before about whether the economy is running too hot or you want to give it a bit of a boost, the key measure for that is inflation. And so the RBA has a target inflation band. They want to keep inflation between 2 and 3%. And if they think it's going to be higher than 3%, that's a justification or a trigger to raise interest rates. If it's below 2%, then that's a trigger to cut interest rates. And it's why we're so interested, or why the financial papers are so interested in inflation. Because if inflation's looking like it's picking up, it means potentially that the RBA is going to start raising rates.
So that's definitely an indicator you'd want to be watching.
Absolutely, yeah.
If inflation's picking up, then you might, I don't know. It's not advice, of course, but you might consider fixing or something like that, because you say, well, that's a sure, an indicator that rates are about to go up, might be a good time to fix.
For example, I mean, it's also the case that typically lower interest rates increase asset prices, because if you're borrowing to buy assets, like house prices are a classic example, there's one study that says that house prices, 81% of house price movements are determined by interest rates. Almost nothing else matters, because the cheaper it is to get a hold of money, the more you can pay for a property, so property prices go up. But it's the same is true for any asset class, and shares are no exception. So if interest rates are falling, that's a positive for share prices. But if inflation is going up and then interest rates follow, then that might be a negative for share prices.
But yeah, okay. But so we'll need to wrap this up in a second. But during COVID time, so we saw interest rates falling, right? But also they were saying that house prices were going to fall as well. So was that a reaction to, like, the interest rates falling? Was it the RBA saying we're going to keep dropping rates to try and keep house prices up? Or was that just some weird sort of COVID thing where we saw house prices and interest rates falling at the same time?
I mean, house prices at the time we're talking now have stopped falling, and it looks like we have barely fallen 5% in most capitals.
Right.
So we really haven't seen any much downside on prices, and nothing like people were fearing.
No, because I heard there was 20% at one point, or 25%.
20, 30%. Yeah, some people were talking about that. And it didn't happen. But falling interest rates are one of the key factors. And since COVID started, interest rates are have half of what they were pre-COVID, if you include the pivot to fixed interest rates, because there's a big gap between variable and fixed interest rates because of this term funding facility story.
That makes a lot of sense, because I was wondering about that, because the fixed rate seemed to keep dropping, but the variable wasn't tracking the same thing. So so that's the TFF.
Yeah. But just what you're saying there about, was the RBA dropping interest rates to get house prices to go up? So as I was saying there, the RBA's got no mandate to do that. In many ways, they've got to not care about house prices at all, unless house prices influence the outlook for inflation. Because the RBA is an inflation targeting bank. And so its central mandate is to care about what the outlook for inflation is. If house prices are going up or down, unless that's going to influence inflation, the RBA sort of says, it's not our problem, we don't care.
But didn't you said before their mandate was not just inflation, it was about the welfare of the people and something else, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's officially what it is. Right. But there's an accord that says they should be an inflation targeting central bank.
Right. Okay. That's just their slogan. It's like a motto.
Yeah.
RBA, we care about you.
Yeah. Nah,
we don't really.
Just inflation.
We're all about inflation over here. All right, that feels like a good time to wrap it up. So in summary, the RBA they control the quantity of the money in the market, and they control the price of the money in the market. And, you know,
all they care about is inflation.
All they care about is inflation, despite what they say. All right, nice one. All right, well, I reckon that does us for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. We'd, of course, love to hear from you. If you've got any questions for Thomas or questions for me, email us at cve@equitymates.com, and make sure you give us a rating and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And we look forward to speaking to you again next time. Take it easy.
This podcast proudly brought to you by Equity Mates Media. Always remember, all information contained in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, financial, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of Equity Mates are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to our disclaimer page, where you can find resources to search for a registered financial professional near you.